ahead and read.
The lawyer says that in a risky surgical procedure that is performed only with the patient's informed consent, doctors intentionally cause the patient's heart and brain functions to stop by drastically reducing the patient's body temperature. Okay, so we got some background info about surgical procedures that are risky, performed with patient's consent, and what they do.
Excellent.
When the procedure is completed, okay, so when they're all done, the body temperature is quickly restored. Because the doctors deliberately stop the patient's life functions, if these functions do not resume, I guess the life functions do not resume following the procedure, the medical team is technically guilty of manslaughter. Yikes. Which one of the following principles, if valid, most helps to justify the lawyer's analysis?
So what kind of question is this?
It's like strengthen.
Yes, because they were saying which of the following premises, if true, most strengthens the lawyer's argument. Essentially, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
So what is our conclusion in our argument?
If these functions do not resume the following procedures, then the medical team is technically guilty of manslaughter.
Yes. So we're trying to prove that they are technically guilty of manslaughter.
Yeah.
All right. So what principle would guarantee or like would strengthen that or lead to that? So go ahead and start with A.
Anytime a medical procedure could result in the patient's death, the medical team could be charged with manslaughter. Okay, that.
Do you like that one? Yes, no, or
no.
Why?
I don't like this one. One, like, I don't like the coulds, the cans language in this, but also to like charged with manslaughter is not what we're looking for. We're looking for like guilty of manslaughter.
Okay, I don't charged or guilty. I'm not really concerned with that difference here. But we're trying to say that like they are guilty of manslaughter, where this just says that they could be charged. Like it's not strong enough.
Yeah.
Right. Like we need something that says that the medical team is.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying by charge, but it's like, and like any time procedure could result. Like no,
yeah.
we want something way more specific and strong.
Yeah, I feel like those words are just too soft for what we're looking for.
Excellent. All right. What about B?
If a medical procedure is known to carry a very high risk of causing the patient's death, then only if the patient does not die can the doctors be guilty of manslaughter. No.
So this one we're saying if a medical procedure is known to carry a very high risk of causing the patient's death, so if a high risk, then the patient can be guilty of manslaughter only
the doctor, yeah.
If the patient dies. Well, just because like that's a necessary thing. And so like that just means if they don't die, we can't be guilty of manslaughter. It doesn't guarantee it. So it's not strong.
Yeah.
So we can cross B off too.
C, one is guilty of manslaughter only when one intends to cause irreversible loss of a person's life function. Okay, that's not, no, this is like.
And this is saying we're guilty of manslaughter only when one intends to do something. Like that even then doesn't guarantee that if you intend to do something, it's manslaughter. So we can cross that one off.
Yeah. Deliberately bringing about the cessation of a person's life functions is manslaughter if and only if the cessation is permanent. Okay, so if and only if is biconditional.
Right.
So if you deliberately bring about like the cessation means like what the stop at the end of a person's life functions, then it's manslaughter only if the stopping of life's functions is permanent.
Does that happen in ours?
Yeah, I think so, because then you say because the doctors deliberately stop the patient's life functions, right? Like they deliberately bring about the cessation. Yeah. So then the medical team is guilty of manslaughter if the functions don't resume following the procedure.
So essentially we're saying that if we deliberately bring about the cessation of a person's life function let's say that happens, which we have, it's manslaughter if and only if essentially the person dies.
Yeah.
So that means that if the person dies, it's manslaughter or vice versa. And so we have our sufficient and our stimulus where we do that. we deliberately stop the person's life function, and we say if they do not resume following, so if they die, you're guilty of manslaughter. Yes. So D is going to be our answer.
Yeah.
But let's check out E.
Intentionally stopping a patient's life functions is manslaughter unless the patient agrees to the procedure and might die without the treatment. Okay, yeah, like that last part just killed it for me. Like might die without the treatment. Like,
how would you diagram this sentence?
Intentionally stopping a patient's life functions is not manslaughter. Then the patient agrees to the procedure and might die without the treatment.
Unless the patient agrees to the procedure and might die without the treatment. So if it's not manslaughter,
then they
that
agree
means
to the procedure.
Agrees and they might die without it. Okay.
Yeah, and that's like not where our
What we
conclusion is
need.
heading.
Excellent. And so that's why our answer is C.
D.
D. Thank you.